Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the No Fatwas Given podcast, episode 12. I'm Saad, and this is my co-host Fahad. And now it's just the two of us today. Maybe a third. Sohaib may join us, but in the meantime, it's just us on the couch. Couple big things. I mean, there's been developments, I would say, in the whole UK grooming gang scandal thing. Particularly recently, there was a conversation between Piers Morgan and Jordan Peterson, maybe 4 or 5 days ago on the Uncensored show, which was fascinating. Not because it brought any new developments as far as the actual, the grooming gangs or any new information or new insights, but rather all the kind of, I would say, just very flat out nonsense that Jordan Peterson continued to say.
Islamophobia.
Straight.
First of all, before we even get started on Jordan Peterson, right? The idea, and he goes into this, right? He goes into we had to separate what Tony Robinson, because they talk about Tony Robinson in this, what he separates about the grooming gang, and when he's right about this compared to every single other time he's wrong, and his character, we can leave his character aside completely and just focus on the things he's truthful about. Thing is, this is Islamic paradigm-wise, we would call this untrustworthy. We wouldn't take anything from this guy, right? Our entire hadith corpus, we have an entire section of study called Ilmul Rajal, which is basically the study of the person. If we find a person to be a liar, if we find a person to have a bad memory, we reject everything that comes from him. Everything comes from that person, hadith-wise, we say, okay, that's poor status, right? We don't believe in that. Same thing. The idea that the West is like, no, we can completely ignore every single other testimony of his that was false and then go with this one because it aligns with our thing. No, you throw this out completely. This guy, you don't trust him at all, and then you get other sources that are trustworthy and elevate them instead of rallying behind this guy. So now my question is, why are they rallying behind him?
It's honestly, there's only really a one person essentially who brought this into there might be people who rally behind Tommy Robinson in general because they're probably Islamophobic themselves, or they do consider the invasion of Muslims and Islam in the West as an issue, right? So Tommy Robinson obviously felt that was an issue, okay? And so everything he did, and Piers Morgan, actually, for credit to him, he brought that up a lot. He's like, look, this is not a good guy. Maybe you guys in America aren't aware of what he's been doing in the UK, but he is not a good guy. He's a man with clearly an agenda, but yes, he also, when Muslims actually did something bad, whether, there are obviously grooming gangs that are Pakistani Muslims primarily, and so he called him out on that. Good, sure. But he said one thing right. It's like, well, he's not a good character. Fine, he did one good thing, or he was right about one thing. And again, as you mentioned, it's not good about his character because... And what other thing? And Piers Morgan.
And why is he right about this? Because it doesn't matter what it is. He's Islamophobic. Everything will pin on Islam. Of course, if you pin everything,
eventually you'll hit something.
Eventually you'll get something. Maybe it's something correct that okay, there were Muslims involved in something, and so then suddenly you're a savior. No, see, this is the thing. This is why. I mean, there's many reasons why I don't trust Jordan Peterson anymore. But this is another reason, right? Basically, why would somebody take the witness testimony or the journalistic integrity of somebody who's so defamed, who's so he's a liar and he just has very bad credit, right? But you would still take his testimony over anybody else.
But Jordan Peterson put it this way: the way he said it made it seem like, well, nobody's perfect, is what he's saying. He's like, look,
ridiculous.
Well, if only basically, why do we put everyone up on a pedestal? I get that in general, meaning. No one's perfect, and just because someone is saying something doesn't mean you discount them because they made some mistake at some point in their lives. But this is not a guy who's made one mistake. His entire, his journalism, or whatever the heck you want to call it, right, is biased starters from the get-go, right? Clearly Islamophobic rhetoric from the beginning, and plus not just that. Forget his whole journalism or whatever he's touting about the Muslims thing, but he's done mortgage fraud, this fraud, he's been caught in many of the contempt of court. And the point is he's done so many other things outside of just his blatantly incorrect journalism that would make him non-trustworthy. So for Jordan Peterson to come along and be like, well, not everyone's a saint.
This guy is a repeat offender, right? And the thing is, Same way I wouldn't trust anything that comes out of, or not that trust. I wouldn't take him as a witness. I wouldn't take him as a public figure that we should all rally around, right? Tony Tony Robinson. Other people who might give the same report, that's fine. I have no problem with the report itself. And trust me, every single one of those guys, Pakistani guys, they should be, according to Islamic punishment, capital punishment to every single one of them. I'm perfectly fine with that. The thing is, in the same way, I would extend this exact same analysis to Jordan Peterson. I don't trust Jordan Peterson anymore. And the main reason, the core reason is, in this podcast, he talks about, well, we should trust him when he's true, because we seek the truth. Problem is, Jordan Peterson flat out denied seeking the truth if it was 100% for certain, right? In the famous
Muhammad
Hijab, Jordan Peterson, and another guy, the Orthodox Christian guy, they had a thing, and then they were giving dawah essentially to Jordan Peterson.
Was also there,
Hamza Zorsa was there, and in the middle, it seems strange where Jordan Peterson was going. So Muhammad Hijab stopped the conversation and asked flat out, if we give you undeniable proof, I think it was something like that, right?
something unequivocal, basically.
Unequivocal, undeniable proof that Islam is the truth, would you believe it? And to that question, he said no. So which means Jordan Peterson is not out here seeking the truth.
Yeah, and the answer to that question would always be yes. If someone says to anything, it could be, if I told you undeniably, with perfect evidence that pigs could fly, would you believe me? And I would be like,
yes.
To answer the question, no matter what to say, no matter if I gave you a perfect evidence and you could fill in the blank after that, anything, the answer to that is always yes, if they could obviously provide the evidence. So now when someone says, if I can provide you 100% evidence for the truth of Islam or Christianity or whatever, it doesn't matter, like I said, anything, the answer to that question is yes. And the fact that someone says that, if I brought you perfect evidence, would you believe? And he's like, no.
No. So which means, again, he operates on his truth, right? The thing that he very stands against with the woke ideology that, their truth is, no, there's only one truth. There is one truth ultimately. Pigs can fly, pigs can't fly, right? Or a pig can fly, whatever it is, there is one truth to this, right? God exists, God doesn't exist. It can't happen both ways, right? Somebody went on the moon, somebody never went on the moon. Both things can't be true. You could believe whatever you want, but only one can be true. So if somebody says, we will give you undeniable evidence that somebody went on the moon, I would say, then I would believe it. And same thing vice versa. Now, why would he say no? That's the question. At that moment, why did he say no to Islam? Because he gave an answer right after that and tells you why he said no.
Yes. And it stems from, in his case, I would say, a combination of a messiah. Well, it stems from arrogance, right? The root of root of most evils is probably arrogance, right? It is as the Quran says, talks about Satan or Iblis in the Quran, the devil. His primary sin, what caused him to transgress in the first place, was arrogance, was pride, right? Basically, I am better than he. Why should I bow down to Adam, or so on and so forth?
I'm made of fire. He's made from clay.
Yeah.
I'm better than Adam. Why would I bow down?
And so this is super important. And so same thing here. So now if someone tells you, if I give you perfect evidence that the Quran or Islam is the truth, and you say no, and then his story was this. Well, when I was walking on the streets of New York or whatever, these Orthodox Jews passed by me, and they called me Rabbi Peterson. And he's like, if these Jews, these Orthodox Jews, and I'm clearly not a Jew, right? I'm a Christian at best, basically, is what he says, right? If they can perceive me as a rabbi, then I have no need to basically change my religion, basically, because I can be all-encompassing with my theology or whatever, and just using my own moral compass or whatever he's doing to arrive at his morals, right? And which makes no sense. For a person who believes in God, you have to believe in objective morality automatically. Like, it just follows.
I don't know. Would that be the definition of narcissism? I don't know about narcissism, but like essentially, he wants to be praised. Arrogance, right? He wants to be praised. He doesn't want to become Muslim because then the Jews won't call him a rabbi. Basically, he'll lose a certain Jewish bloc. He doesn't want to stray too far from the Muslims, but now he has, because of course he's joined Daily Wire. But before he had a lot of Muslim viewers. He was very proud of that too, right? He would openly say it. That's why he was talking to Muhammad Hijab. He was saying, hey, maybe this is an avenue for me to get a lot of Muslim followers. And that's why he was engaging with the Muslims. And then same thing with the Christians. He had a huge series on Christianity when in fact he doesn't believe any of it. He believes in Christianity as a truth that manifested what Western society is today. And that is the only reason it is the truth, not because it's literally the truth.
Honestly, to this point, I still actually don't know exactly where his faith lies. Meaning, I don't know if he believes in Christianity as most Christians would, Catholic or Protestant or otherwise, because he seems to often refer to the stories in the Bible as fables, basically, as almost mythology that you can, like, not as truth, right? So when I take, assuming I was a Christian, if there was a biblical story, if I thought the Bible was a truth, it's a word of God, then when God tells me a story,
I would say
then it's the truth. It happened, right? When God says that David, killed Goliath and so on and so forth, right? That actually happened. When Moses split the sea, it actually happened. The sea was split, right? These aren't metaphorical things. These are real stories. And so for him to come and say, well, these are just kind of myths and parables, whether they happen or not isn't important. Is the morals you can derive from them that is what matters.
He calls them true, though. You know why he calls them true? He said they're true in the sense that they manifested a culture or a practice and an ideology amongst the people. So in that sense, they are truth because a lot of people accepted them as the truth, and they manifested itself in a way into people's actions and beliefs. And in that sense, it's true, which is absolute nonsense. Which is not Christians, right? Christians do not believe in that sense, right? So calling himself a Christian is absolutely false.
And it was clear, actually, when he was mentioning some of this stuff during that little, that discussion they were in the mosque, actually, at the time. The Orthodox Christian sitting beside him
Questioned him.
Disagreed with actually, I would say, some major points he was making. He's like, we don't quite. And later on, the Orthodox Christian came on and had his own little, spiel about how that discussion went. And he's like, yeah, I don't know why he invited me to come sit by him. We don't agree on a lot, right? He's a very different type of Christian than what I am.
I think he objected to the fact he's Christian too. Like they had a whole discussion after that series of, what he actually believes. Is he truly a Christian? No, he just believes in Christianity as a heritage of the West, and he's very Western. So he thinks Christianity is sacred because it created what Western society is today. That's basically
so this ideology that we're talking about. So the reason we brought all this up about how Jordan Peterson kind of evolved over time, where we saw this evolution of him kind of.
I wouldn't say it's an evolution because I think it's exactly who he was all the time.
Maybe from the get-go, or but I think after being famous for a while, this arrogance or messiah complex came with time. I think when he first had his claim to fame, when he talked about the whole pronoun issue in Canada, I bet if you asked him then, like 10 years ago, whenever that was, these same questions, he probably would have had different answers. But his experience after that led him down this path where now he's completely shut that door to, he's not open-minded anymore. He's very fixed on what he believes or what he thinks is right and just and true and whatever, right? And he's not very open-minded at all anymore. That much is abundantly clear to me. So I don't know. I think it's shame. Maybe he was just like this all along. It's hard to say because that question wasn't asked to him until at that point. But getting back to the reason we brought this up, though, is this mindset of his is very apparent, or the trajectory he's gone on now since then, especially this kind of Islamophobic, is where
he joined the Daily Wire.
Sure. But I mean, Candace Owens joined the Daily Wire.
Yeah, but she left.
Right. Sure. She was pushed out.
She was principled too. She was principled.
She was, but I don't think in general, yes, the Daily Wire is very Zionist, but I don't think joining the Daily Wire in and of itself says that. But its actions or word sense that obviously have, regardless of whether he joined the Daily Wire or not. And so, but in this conversation with Piers Morgan, it is abundantly clear that the Islamophobic comes up. And I'll start off with, you want to bring up the first point?
I'll show you. So he basically said, in the beginning, he goes on this rant about, Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. And then he says, you know what, there's 4 complexities surrounding the situation, right? And he called it 4 bins. And we can discuss each one quickly. But I'll just list them out right now, and we can pick and choose which ones we want to address. The racial divide that typifies the crimes, right? Pakistani Muslim immigrants and white working class young girls. I'm basically reading the transcript from the video. There's a racial and ethnic religious divide that is part and parcel of the crime. And there's also a class issue in the UK with regards to the victims and also the whistleblowers like Robinson. Then there's the meta problem of the differences between Islam and Christianity. The additional problem that psychopath sadists use religious justification to camouflage and justify their crimes. And there's the problem of open borders and immigration and progressive presumption that all cultures, no matter their differences, are valuable in their diversity and can be integrated peacefully into society. Into the society, right? So essentially, these are the problems.
There's a couple other things you brought up too, but yeah, we'll talk about these things.
So first of all, I think even though he brought up all these issues, he really did focus on one. at least initially. Like he's focused hardcore on one. He focuses primarily on the differences Islam and
In the West as a whole.
in the West as
He
a
said
whole.
he
He says Christianity, but
he
it's
said
really the
Christianity
West.
is the West, basically.
Basically, Christianity is
And he
West.
brought up this whole countries thing. And his first major thing, he's like, just look at the Muslim countries. He said there's like 53 Muslim majority countries, 3 of which are basically three of which are democracies. And
The rest of them, he called them shitholes.
yeah.
And like they call them, even the democracies, I think he called them shitholes. And then the other
Yeah,
places,
and he says they're not very functional democracies, and he says the other ones that aren't, meaning like UAE and Saudi potentially, is basically, and he said this, his words, undeserved oil money.
yeah,
which is like
he called the
undeserved.
three
Where
of
did that
them.
come from?
By the way, the 3 one that he liked, the reason he liked them was because they favored the Abraham Accords, right? And despite that, he says they're undeserved oil money, right? Meaning basically, there's not a single Muslim place in the world that he has any respect for. Fine, whatever. But the other countries, he's basically saying, why would these Muslims, there's something must be wrong. Essentially, what he's saying is that there must be something wrong with Islam. There is not a single country that's democratic.
Yeah, he said, he said this is the real question.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the real question is it some other problem? Meaning, what is what is the single similarity between these 53 countries that are all doing poorly that unifies them in doing poorly? Is it their Islam, which he obviously thinks is
That's what
Islam,
he thinks, yes.
versus something else? And then he brought up the whole democracy thing you said.
So first of all, and this, by the way, his main point was democracy. He kept coming back to it.
Yeah.
There was no other point. If he listens to his entire thing, besides just being a Tony Robinson supporter and basically being Islamophobic, he had no other points besides look at these countries. Islam causes them not to be democratic. And now, just briefly, what does democracy have to do with sexual crimes? Nothing.
This is just like, it was almost like a tirade against Islam. So one has absolutely nothing to do with it, and two is there's many assumptions here. Your assumption is that democracy is the correct way of government. It is the only correct way of government. And for what it's worth, I'll give Peterson credit. He's like, but there's many people who live in whether there's monarchies or kingdoms or whatever, right? Some other forms of government who don't think they laugh at our democracies, at how slow they function, the problems we have, right? Many of them they don't, right? And so he brought this up, and he goes, and here's the thing: as soon as he brought this up,
He did bring this up.
Yeah, so Jordan Peterson says this whole thing about they're not democracies, right?
Democracy,
basically, democracy is the criteria for success, and these Muslim countries haven't adopted democracy, and the ones that haven't even done it right. Something along those lines, right? And so then Piers Morgan says, well, many of these foreigners, these people who come to these Muslim countries from monarchies or dictatorships or whatever, they come and they laugh at democracies. They don't think it's necessarily the best way of governing, right? And to that point, what's his next point? So he backfires with what? He's like, oh, well, that's another problem.
Yeah.
You're bringing these Muslims into our country who don't agree with our way of life. And that's a discussion worth having. And it's like...
So this is crazy. So the thing is, let's just leave this topic for 1 second, right? Would Jordan Peterson agree with bestiality? What do you think? No.
I think initially he would say no, and then if you push him on, he'd probably say yes.
If he found a huge base of followers, like millions, he might be okay with it. I'll be honest, right? But right now he will say no, right? Democracy in Denmark during COVID times. I think they had a vote right before COVID, and they finally illegalized bestiality because it was happening rampant all over the farms. They were doing it with dogs, sheep, and whatnot. And they made it illegal only on the thing that, hey, there's no real consent with these animals. It was a consent thing. It was like a Me Too movement for sheep. And they basically ultimately said, hey, we'll stop. And by the way, they lost the vote by the people who were wanted bestiality, essentially, they lost by few percentage points. It was not like a 80-20 or anything like that. It was very close to 50.
It was a very weird... I actually read into this after we touched this last on the podcast. It's really strange. And it could be earlier. I think it might have been 2014. But
it was earlier. It was earlier. But during COVID, through a vote, they brought it back. And you know why they brought it back? Because during COVID, everybody was alone at home. And they had some psychological, mental breakdowns. And they're like, hey, you know what will help these breakdown? If the guy has sex with animals. And so they brought it back for COVID. So this is what democracy does, right? Democracy doesn't just magically solve problems, all the problems that Jordan Peterson has. It could very well lead to them introducing bestiality again.
I mean, actually, these questions have been asked for people. That's where the whole objective morality and subjective morality comes from, right? So if your morality is based off basically your own thought and your own wisdom, and my intellect is so vast that I can come to all the right conclusions, then when you ask someone, anyone, right, atheists usually, that, hey, is incest okay? Is bestiality okay? And initially they'd be like, no. But I'm like, hey, what if the mother and the son are two consenting adults? What if it only happens after they're 18? There's no power struggle, really, whatever. I mean, you can see all these power issues.
They'll
Right?
say, "Oh, you could have kids born out of it." Okay, what if there's two brothers?
Yeah, I'm saying. So then it's like, then they're like, well, basically the whole do no harm principle fails here, because in their gut reaction, it's like, oh no, incest no, bestiality no. And then as soon as you kind of push them on it, right? Let's play devil's advocate. I could push for it. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? For us, it's very clear. God said it's wrong.
No,
It's unlawful. You
even
can't
that,
do it.
we're going back to democracy, right?
Yeah.
His standard for everything seems to be democracy. What if 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, they vote and allow incest? Or they vote, America votes. America still, let's just say, they solve the immigration problem. There are 80% white people, maybe not, let's just say 100% white people, and they vote that bestiality is okay. Like in Denmark, because in Denmark is mostly white people.
I believe so.
Is that suddenly okay? Would Jordan Peterson be in favor of that? No, this is ridiculous. Jordan Peterson right now, if you ask him, he'll be like, bestiality is wrong. Oh no, there's only one gender or two genders, right? Two genders, he said, right? Not many genders, right? But what if the U.S. decided on a vote and decided no, there's in fact hundreds of genders? No, he would go on a crusade against this because it's not true. So then, did democracy help there? Did 51% of the people oppress the 49%? Yeah, it could happen. It could happen on any of these issues. Right now, the major issue was trans. But before, like a little while before that, the major issue was LG, right?
Yeah, the LG,
but,
not the
but the
T
government
part,
and the
yeah.
people and the right and the left have all accepted the LG part. There's no even discussion on that anymore. They've always given in. Even Jordan Peterson might defend it.
Yeah, love is love. They have no problem with that. Actually, most of them don't. I mean, one clear example would be wasn't J.K. Rowling, right?
J.K.
The Harry
Rowling.
Potter author. She was someone who, she made Dumbledore gay after the
What
fact,
was it
right?
like the what was she categorized as?
She was called a TERF,
TERF,
a trans exclusionary radical feminist, which
Something, yeah.
basically she's someone who's okay with the LGB, meaning you could be bi, gay,
Queer, whatever.
right? Queer is slightly different, but trans she was against because her argument was this.
No, you could be anything. You can have any kind of sexual preference. You just can't be a guy who admits he's a girl. That's the problem.
No, because for her case was that it takes away from feminism. Because now when men can claim to be women,
then what is
then the whole woman empowerment thing goes away. Yeah. Which is why she was called a TERF. Right.
But again, these are issues that plague the West, right? And they plague the West, and they're a real contention for becoming law, and they have become law in a lot of ways. Why? Because it's democracy.
But I would say there's no doubt that. Okay, so when it comes to Islam, because I did a little bit of research, Islam doesn't actually mandate a certain form of government. So democracy in and of itself isn't haram necessarily or wrong or anything like that. You could actually technically have a Muslim democracy. It's possible. But there's obviously many problems with democracy. Democracy is obviously not the best way. In fact, I would argue now, longevity is a separate issue, right? But a monarchy with a good monarch or dictatorship with a good dictator, I mean, that's the hard part. How do you get a good dictator? It would be the best form of government for obvious reasons. Yeah. Right? If you have a moral, you have a just, let's say, a moral and just dictator, you won the game.
You won the game, yeah.
If you actually get that. Now, how do you select this dictator and then does the son become the next one, an ascension? I get it, right? Democracy, at least the way America's done it, solves some of these problems, and they have the whole two-term thing, which is good when it comes to making sure that even if a bad person comes to office, they don't stay forever. But what's the downside? To make any progress in this country takes forever.
Well, that's one downside. The other downside is democracies can easily be bought.
I mean, APAC has bought this country.
No, APAC.
Evident.
It's not even APAC. It's just anything. Democracy, by its very nature, where it's so decentralized, anybody can be bought. It's very easy. Not even just like people within the United States, the corporations within the United States. I'm saying foreign entities. Anybody can buy power here. It's very easy, right? The famous examples they give us like, how great our democracy is. They would tell us that, they would give us, I forgot what state they gave. The state, the fruit was something, and enough people lobbied for something else to change, right? But it was not the general public that was lobbying, by the way. It was one corporation fighting another corporation, and the other corporation just paid more money and lobbied harder, and then they got it. They advertised enough, they did this and they did that, and they got it. That's it. Right now, we in this city that we live in, we had a vote on increasing taxes for some kind of government expenditure, right? Some program. And I looked at it, I'm like, why would I want to increase my 1% tax? We, US people, we fought the British over 2% tax. But that vote passed. You know why that passed? Because whatever corporation was behind it, whatever entity was benefiting from it, advertised it to so much that it passed.
And the way it was written too. The way it was written is like, oh, look at all the benefits you get, and at the end, it will add a cent to every dollar. And people don't think about it. A cent.
Not percent, 1%.
I know that's a cent on every dollar, but that's the way they wrote it.
No,
the way they wrote it is 1 cent on every dollar. And you're like, oh, just a penny. That's 1%, right? If you're someone who makes, $10,000, there goes $100, and you're like, wait, that's $100? Yeah, it's $100. That's not insignificant for someone who's earning $20,000. $200, that's a lot to them. That could be the difference between being able to eat out, and having a nice meal outside at a restaurant with your family. So it's not insignificant. These taxes are a big deal. And so anything that increased taxes, I pretty much voted against.
So again, this is not like a bash against democracy. I think democracy is fine. I think democracy is one of the better forms of government. It's not even that. But to think that, Islam must have a problem because it's not democratic. And if it was democracy, we wouldn't have these problems. But these problems that you're discussing are happening in the UK, which is democratic.
Yeah. And he obviously has a recency bias, right? He has a clear recency bias and this happens to many people. And I think this is part of his problem where he's like, how can Islam be the truth? And many people have this. Like, if Islam's the truth, why are all the Muslim countries third world?
Which is ridiculous.
Right. No, but I'm saying it is. You would think because I would say it's basic logic. Okay, if you think any deeper about it, it's obviously wrong. But I'm saying basic logic dictates if you are the only people who are truly following God, meaning if Muslims are the last people on earth who actually have God-given guidance left, uncorrupted God-given guidance, then obviously God would favor you. I mean, it would follow, right? Then if you are following God's advice and you are doing as God asks, and this betters you, then you would be on top of the world. Of course you would be. And that makes logical sense. I'm saying from a very simplistic sense, it makes sense. And now it's like...
Very simplistic.
Then how... Yeah, I'm saying very, very basic level logic. It makes sense. And it's like, well, clearly Christianity's at the top. Islam is not. So Christianity might actually be closer to the truth because they seem to be more blessed by God.
But if you go to the height of the Ottoman Empire, which was the same time the Europeans were, didn't even have proper sewage and all that stuff, right? There was a time where Islam was on top. If Jordan Peterson was at that time, what do you think that, Islam must be the truth? It's ridiculous, right? I think there's one picture of a lady who posted on Facebook or something that out of all the fires, every single fire, all the houses were destroyed. One lady's house was lived, and she's like, because my aunt, she's a very pious woman, that's why God saved it. So that means what she's implying is every other house that was burned was not pious, yeah. Right? Unbiased, right? This is called one of the gospels called the prosperity gospel, right? Yeah. The idea that I'm rich, therefore I'm favored by God. Elon Musk must be a good person because he's rich.
Yeah, and I mean I think that's where karma follows. The whole idea of reincarnation, karma usually is not karma, but reincarnation is because you were good in this life, you will have a better life next time, right? You will be reincarnated as a super rich person or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and so Bill Gates is by necessity favored by God. Because he's rich.
Which is nonsense. Which is absolutely nonsense. From an Islamic paradigm, it is complete nonsense. And I would say just from a logical perspective, you think the Pharaoh or a king of old or Hitler was...
Okay, you think you can say that Hitler died a miserable death at the end?
What happened there?
Yes.
All right, sorry. Little snafu there. The camera died or something. We have a new camera system. We're trying new things. Better.
We have no idea how to use it. So
yeah, we're figuring things out. But anyway, we left off where basically I was saying it's not necessary that democracy is the end all be all or the one thing that actually makes the West per se, right? And you could argue that at the height of Muslim, meaning from about 800 AD all the way to about 100 to 200 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, the Muslims were the strongest power for a long time.
Not 200, but for a very, very long time, they were the strongest power. They were the most advanced. A lot of the sciences.
The Dark Ages in Europe were the golden ages in the Islamic world, right?
Yeah, but you wouldn't say that. At that time, if Jordan Peterson was there, like we said, that suddenly Islam is the truth, and whatever Islam is doing is correct, whatever West is doing is incorrect, but or more morally, right?
Yeah, it's not. There's not a moral difference, and it's not democracy that brought the West where it is today necessarily, because we've seen the Roman Empire was the strongest, and it's lasted a lot longer than any of these democracies for a long time, and they were like a dictatorship until much, much later
So
on, right?
going back to Jordan Peterson, it is a complete straw man of an argument. He had nothing to say, and his strongest point was, well, look at these Muslim nations; they're not democracies. Therefore, Islam must be at fault, and if Islam can't produce a democracy, it therefore produces sexual predators. It's just a stupid argument. And I would say something else. In fact, he's a psychologist, right? I would imagine a psychologist of any caliber would understand what happens if you leave cookies for a toddler and say don't eat it. If you have just cookies lying around, the greatest cookies, the stuff he likes, what will you do? Chances are a toddler would eat the cookie, right? Because they're just overexposed to the cookie, they'll probably consume the cookie. What I'm getting to this is, if you have any cursory, even a simple, and one of the guys in the Jordan Peterson podcast, he was actually saying, like, I'm a religious studies professor. I understand religion. The text, the Quran, is completely antithesis of what you were saying that is accusing Islam of, that they're predatory and sexual and stuff like that. They have the harshest punishments for the sexual, and it's very, very clear cut that any sexual crime is punishable by capital punishment.
Yeah, and so actually, one of the people on the panel. So the first part of Piers Morgan's program was he was talking to Jordan Peterson for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then the second part about it was he had a panel of people he was speaking to. One of them was this theologian guy. The other was this.
But before we get to that, let me just finish this point, right?
Yeah.
The point, right? The point is that with the cookie example, which society would produce more sexual predators, right? Which society would? A society that keeps the woman covered. Okay, the women are free; they're free to work. They do that. They did in the Prophet's time, but they're covered, right? That sexual eye candy doesn't exist anymore for men, right? Not only that, I never touched my wife until after I got married. The first time I touched her, okay, was after I got married.
There's
no handshake, nothing.
Yeah,
Now,
in Islam, there's no intimacy until after marriage,
yeah,
right?
how could forget? I haven't shook her hand until after marriage.
Wait, and this is interesting. The same people, the same Islamophobes who look at someone like Habib or someone, or the new Syrian president guy, right, the leader of the Syrian, right, rebel army, who, when someone came, he didn't shake her hand. They're like, oh, look at these Muslims backwards. They don't even shake the hand of the woman. And then on the other hand, they're like, there's a guy who's showing this woman basically so much respect where he's like, look, in Islam, we don't touch women who we're either not married or related to, right? And on the other hand, they're like, oh, Islam is just read their Quran, and all it does is talk about and gratifies rape and stuff. It's like, no. This is the same religion that says don't even shake the hand of another woman that you're not related to or you're not married to.
Don't even sit alone with a woman in a room by herself, because the third person is the shaitan, the devil, right? We know naturally, we're not shy to this. Men have temptations. Men desire women. Leave a man and a woman long enough, a man will have desires. Whether the woman has desires or not, the man will definitely have desires forming, right? So Islam prevents all these things from root, okay? Not only that, if you look at the sex industry, where is it the biggest? Is it the West? Is the West the pioneer and the formers and the acceptors and the proliferators of sex industry? Yes, they are. Europe and the West. They're huge. So much so that I forgot which office that somebody was running for the office, one of the southern states, and she had a whole essentially OnlyFans live show where she was having sex with her husband for donations for her campaign. It's
No way.
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
That's crazy.
So it has gone to, and so what's more deviant? Like, what's more the place where you go take your children to Target and there's nothing you could do because they will see people in panties and bras. Big, huge posters. Okay,
It's unavoidable.
unavoidable. A place where you can go see the ocean without seeing people half naked. A place where it's kind of accepted. It's a cultural practice where college students run around campus either naked or in bras and panties, and this is like This is America. This is culture.
That's liberty in action, man.
This is liberty in action, right?
That's what freedom
this
looks
is
like.
Where news articles are coming out praising and seeing like, oh, look at the plight of the teachers that they have to do OnlyFans on the side. Not that OnlyFans is bad, but hey, we should increase their pay. But not that OnlyFans is bad, that's just empowerment for women. Where twerking is now the most popular dance. Okay, which society will probably have more sex-crazed, sex-hungry people? A country full of incels, like a lot of people are incels, they just can't get women because they don't have a system for that.
And women all around them, because there's no doubt where I would say, actually, for what it's worth, and I don't like quoting Ben Shapiro often, but he brought up this example. He's not the first person to do it, but I remember him talking about this. It's like when someone is raped, obviously it's the rapist's fault, and they should get the capital punishment, 100%. And he gives an alternate example, right? If I am waving $1,000, or I'm holding a brick of gold and waving it above my head, and I'm going to the shadiest part of town, and someone mugs me, you'd be like, okay, the person who stole from you is bad, right? Stealing's bad, getting mugged is bad, so whoever mugged you will get their due punishment, jail time, whatever, some kind of, something, right? Fine. And then you are going to have some fault. You're waving a brick of gold in a poor part of town where people need money or whatever, and they see this idiot waving a brick of gold above his head. You kind of asked for it in a sense, right? Of course, again, primary fault is still the mugger. You should be, technically, I should be able to go any part of town and wave a brick of gold.
There would be no legal repercussions for waving the brick, but everybody will say, don't be an idiot.
Yeah, don't be an idiot. Like, that guy's at least 1% at fault, at the minimum, right? There's some amount of fault.
Even though there's no legal program, they won't get any fine, but it is complete.
Yeah, and so he was talking actually in this context where it comes to rape and this kind of thing. So if a woman puts herself in a position where she goes all the way, this is a slightly separate topic, but the whole idea is like, if a woman in this thing, she meets a man in a club, they flirt, they go all the way down
to their room,
to her house or his house, and they're in their room and they're having a good time, and then they get drunk. Maybe they're drinking, they're drunk a little bit, and then the guy makes an advance. He makes a move. And now she's like, and it's true. Again, I agree. Where if the woman, even at the last second, says no, it's a no. I agree. But you're putting yourself in a very, very vulnerable position, signaling to this person that we're moving forward. And
what I would blame.
You take at least some blame.
The root of the blame, I would say, is the Western society. Western society has led many women into a situation where the Me Too movement had to start, where they're getting sexually abused. Where no means no, that had to be said. Because culture led to many of such moments where two people are drunk and the woman at the last moment is like, oh, maybe I don't want this. And this is a cultural problem. According to Jordan Peterson, it would be a democratic problem because apparently democracy produces the best results only. So this is a ridiculous thing. So that's pretty much mainly what I have to say about the Jordan Peterson, right? His reliability. The strongest argument he brought was democracy, which is a straw man of the highest order. He himself won't even acknowledge the truth. He's not a truth seeker by his own admission in the past. So him and Tony Robbins, I wouldn't.
Tony or Tommy?
Tommy Robinson. I would not use them as a public figure against them. Now going to the grooming ends, because again, this is a grooming end. I think we covered it last time. I think every single person who's involved in a sexual crime should be punished to the highest order. In fact, the best thing Britain can do is punish all of them. And not just focus on 2% or 8% or 10%, whatever the small percentage, because it's not 82%. Of the Pakistani Muslims, they're saying,
but this is important.
Everybody.
So this is what came up. And Mehdi Hassan, actually, I saw a short about this, where Mehdi Hassan brought this point up to Piers Morgan. Where basically, and this is what a lot of, I would say, the Muslims on Twitter and stuff are saying too, and Mehdi Hassan, for example, is saying as well, is like, the grooming gangs isn't a Muslim problem. Meaning, this should not become a Muslim problem. Don't say it's Islam or it's Muslim Pakistanis that are the source of the problem. And the reason this is important is because right now, all the media is talking about is these Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, which, by the way, is a problem. at the very least, and let me quote some data, and then I'll talk about what I'm talking about. This is important though, because of all the data, so there's like 4 or 5 studies that talk about this. One is the Home Office report in the UK from December 2020 that said that most commonly the people within these gangs are white males. That's one.
As the largest percentage.
As the largest percentage, like by far. And then they said there is an overrepresentation of Black and Asian population in these. Sure, I believe that. And I bet that the Pakistani grooming gangs is overrepresented for the number of Pakistanis in Britain. I believe
Some
it, or the
reports
UK.
say they're about equivalent of how much percentage they are of the population.
It could be, but
let's just say there's something
let's say it's over. And it seems like, if I'm going to be fair, it probably is over. I think Pakistanis are overrepresented compared to their population size. It would be my guess.
And the demographics they provide, right? Most Muslims and stuff live in the high population density zones, while majority of the white people, percentage-wise, live in the rural areas.
Yeah, relatively speaking, yeah, for sure. Okay, a second, please. So the National Police Chiefs Council's data, this was from 2023, recorded 4,228 cases of group-based child sexual abuse in 2023, and among the suspects, 83% were white, 2% were of Pakistani heritage. And again, even 2% was probably more.
No, it's not more. It's not more in that sense.
I don't think Pakistani are 2% of the population.
They are 2% about it.
It could be. It's roughly equivalent.
It could be slightly more, maybe.
And there's a single report, and this is a Quilliam report from December 2017, that claimed 84% of grooming gang offenders were South Asian heritage. But this faced a lot of criticism for a variety of reasons. One,
This is South Asian or this is Asian?
They said South Asian. South Asian origin.
Because one report just said Asian.
This one said South Asian heritage. And look, this particular study was not peer reviewed. They only talked to 280 people over 12 years or something like that. Like, again, kind of a nonsensical study, and this is from 2017, and completely disagrees with the cases before.
280 is such a small sample size.
Here's the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center, and this is approximately 30% of offenders were of Asian origin. All right. Office of the Children's Commission Inquiry said that of the 2,409 victims, children victims, report. Okay, this one didn't say, and the other one, and this last one said that the majority are white. Long story short is this: at best, you can claim that maybe the Pakistani Muslim men in these grooming gangs are overrepresented, and not by much. Okay, at best, fine. Let's just say it's 30%. Again. You don't focus on that this is some sort of Islamic problem all of a sudden, which is what's happening, right? They're saying, oh, it's an Islamic problem, it's a Muslim problem, it's these Islamic ideals, it's the Quran, it's a Sharia law, whatever that allows for this, which is obviously not the case. Rather, it's a grooming gangs do this. It is bad for people, and so focus on these gangs, not a couple Pakistani gangs.
What was the percentage of white people?
Like 80. Most of the data said 80-something%.
80 what?
One said 83%.
So 82% of the population is white. So they're also overrepresented.
Potentially, yeah. So again, it doesn't matter because at the end we're worried about the victims. We want the rape to stop. We want the grooming to stop. It doesn't matter who's committing
I would say by the very fact, and I guess it speaks to a lot of issues, right? Their thing is there's a bias. One of the things issues we'll get into is that they're censoring it because they don't want to offend the Muslim community.
They don't want to be called racist.
They don't want to be called racist, right? So leave race out of it.
No, which this is separate. I would argue is also nonsense.
It's also nonsense too.
A lot of the high-profile cases. So by the way, there's been many cases against white groomer gangs as well, who've been taken to court and justice has been served. But a lot of the higher-profile cases, the only ones that have been talked about, not these other cases. And Mehdi Hassan brought this up. Mehdi Hassan's like, look, there's a case in 2011, 2014, there's 2017, there's this case of white rapists, of 7 individuals that raped a 5-year-old even, or a 7-year-old, or a 9-year-old, right? These are crazy incidents, right? They don't get much media attention. But yes, now when a Pakistani Muslim man commits the same thing, it's all over the news media. So the point is, in fact, I would say it's the opposite. It's not that these grooming gangs aren't being prosecuted because the government or the authorities are afraid of retribution or being called a racist. I would say it's the opposite. When a Pakistani groomer gang is found, it makes headline news. And when let's say a white grooming gang is found, it doesn't make headline news. So I would say it's actually not.
Let's just say the UK puts all its effort, spends all its money fighting specifically Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. So according to the study, out of every 100 girls, they would save 2 of them. 3, 5 of them. So you're spending like you will celebrate on your pat on your back that we've solved the problem when 95 other girls out of every 100 are getting sexually abused. No, that is not what you want. Focus on solving the issue. That why are so much sexual abuse happening?
Not one ethnic group within the issue. And this is not actually. Did you also notice this? They often say this, and this was one of the points you brought up with the Jordan Peterson thing is, it's an ethnic divide. Basically, it is these Pakistani Muslim groomers who are going after young white women.
Yeah.
Not of other races. And here's the thing: stats-wise, it's not very clear who the majority of the victims are. They're probably white because majority of the people are white, which would make some sense. But are they specifically victimizing them? Are there no Pakistanis?
Yeah, why are
Pakistanis
there,
not grooming other Pakistanis?
why aren't there
I don't
any
know.
percentages of like what the percentage are? Yes, majority of
The
probably
data's
white.
pretty crap, it looks like. Honestly.
It is absolutely
Even
not.
whether majority of Pakistani or not, the data seems pretty crap here.
If the study is true, like 85% of the people are white, is this a white cultural problem? Clearly, a religion, the Western doesn't value religion as the highest thing, so you wouldn't attribute it to religion. But is it a cultural problem of the West that 85% of white people, 85% of the people who do sexual abuse are white? Is that some kind of systemic problem? No. I would never say that. I would say this is the fault of the greater society, and society affects everybody equally, and it manifests in these evil people.
And it seems to me, I'm just being honest, just by the data we do have, there's this limited data. It seems to me that the demographics of these grooming gangs matches just the general demographic of the UK. So roughly, maybe let's say 5% of these grooming gangs are Asian. That's probably roughly the amount of Asians in the UK. 85% are white men. Roughly 82% of people are white. So I mean, this is nonsensical to make this a ethnic battle. It is these Pakistani grooming gangs that's a problem. And this is what people are battling is, look, let's fight grooming gangs, not just the Pakistani grooming gangs.
Yeah, but why is this an issue in the first place, right? It's an issue largely on Twitter, right? It's blown up on Twitter.
Not just Twitter, mainstream media's picked this up too.
Yeah, they picked it up later, but again, I thought Twitter established that we don't trust mainstream media, so I wouldn't trust them anyways. We could trust podcasts. We could look at like Jordan Peterson and their opinions. We could look at like these like podcasts and stuff and the Twitter. But why go to media anyways? But if you look at all this, who started this? Because by these grooming gang things have been going for a while. This was
a decade ago. Yeah.
This was an issue that the UK has been dealing with. But why is this suddenly blowing up in America? It's because Elon Musk
tweeted it. Yeah,
and Elon Musk is Islamophobic. To a degree, he is.
To a degree, 100%.
He is, to a degree, he is, right? Every single thing he says is wow. He's a coward Islamophobe. He won't be so blatant as Jordan Peterson to call it out, or Tommy Robinson. He's a coward. He'll just retweet, say wow. Okay, that's how.
Interesting. Wow. This needs to stop. Like very stuff like that.
So yeah, he's a coward. But again, this is the people who are riling it up again. People like Tommy Robinson, Jordan Peterson, and Elon Musk. They're not really unbiased here, right? They're only focusing on certain people, certain cases, and certain reports, while never even actually. Funny thing with Elon is he doesn't even acknowledge any post of his. He doesn't retweet or anything. Any post that counters his opinion. The Ian guy, this guy who posted the huge thing, hey, what am I missing? And then he posted a huge thing on Zionism and stuff. Didn't reply to that.
Yeah.
Right? Even though he got completely ratioed, means that must have been the top comment to his question.
Or the top comment for you for that question.
No, not for me. Like it got ratioed so badly that it must be the top comment. Everybody was talking about it. It is so high, and it definitely for Elon Musk, he sees...
It must have popped up.
He sees the top-hearted things first.
Yeah.
If Twitter's algorithm is even reasonably good, he would see that first.
Then yeah, the posts that are most or replies that are most interacted with should find their way to the top. Yeah.
And his was clearly the most interactive with it, and yet no reply there. So he's uninterested in anything that diverges from his opinion. So I would say the entire podcast, it showed that this is mainly at least people on Twitter, we see it one way, like, oh my God, Islam is being attacked and blah, blah, blah. And there's so many people with this opinion. I still think it's a minority. yes, the media is heavily pushing on it, but I think people have stopped trusting the media overall. This issue on the ground is probably not as bad. You even saw, even on Jordan Peterson's podcast, people came up and said that this is ridiculous. One guy defended Islam, saying that, hey, you can't call it an Islamic problem, which is another thing. Even Tate calling it Islamic problem is such absolute nonsense.
Tate's opinion on this is weird. So there's a couple things going around.
You want to go on Tate now?
Yeah, I do.
Did we cover Tate last time?
I don't think, maybe briefly, but here's what's been happening. I've seen a lot more of. People are just like tossing him aside, basically. So let's just say what happened. So he accepted Islam about 2 years ago now, something like that. And then he accepted Islam. You know, the Muslim world is naturally happy when someone, especially of such fame and you can say power, right, that comes through that fame, becomes Muslim. It's like, hey, great, awesome. Here's another person who saw the light, and he'll touch many other people's minds, and good, right? And onboarding went, and he interviewed Muhammad Hijab and many other Muslims over time, right? Spoke to Andrew Tate, and look at it. Shortly after that, he was jailed. Like before even his first Ramadan, he was jailed, and he's been house arrest and all this stuff. So I would cut him a little bit of slack. Unlike many others, I don't think he had the same opportunity to go and meet, like Sneako's been traveling around the world with all these Dawa guys and whatnot, right? Let's say Tate wanted to do that. He didn't even have the option. He's stuck in Romania. No one freaking goes to Romania, right? I mean, of all these Da'is or whatever, right? None of the Dawa guys are going to Romania. So my point is, so one, let's cut him a little bit slack. Why is he doesn't have the same knowledge as a sartorial shooter or a Sneako or all these guys who also became Muslim? One, cut him some slack. Two is, who are we to judge his Islam, right? The people are saying, oh, he just became Muslim for PR. Because there's this one clip of him saying, when I'm in Dubai, I'm Muslim. When I'm in Romania, I'm Christian, something like that. Look, I'm not going to, he says he's Muslim. He claims he's Muslim.
He clearly has a lacking of Islamic knowledge, which makes him say these things. Actually, there's actually many, like I think, what was one of the MMA fighters, I don't want to call him out, I don't want to call him out specifically, but there was an MMA fighter who, after converting to Islam and everything else, he made a statement like, Muslims do believe in the Bible. This is clearly like there's a lacking of knowledge, right?
Actually, Andrew Tate said something very similar.
Yes.
Oh, Muslims also believe in the Bible. Muslims also believe in Jesus. But look, we believe in the OG, the original Bible, the original, the gospel of Jesus, which we don't have anymore.
There is a lacking of thing, and it mainly stems from the fact that after they became Muslim, they just were not surrounded amongst Muslims long enough to absorb
and I would say, again,
the knowledge.
Considering his house arrest and the legal cases, and he was in jail for 3 months, for God's sake,
and
right?
His priority,
in a dungeon.
His priority was his legal case for a long time.
And his mom had a heart attack. Look, a lot went on in his life. He's still fighting legal battles, by the way, as we speak. So, look, I'll cut him some slack, right? A lot of slack even, right? Who are we to judge? Allah knows best. I'll consider him Muslim until he says otherwise. So that's one. Two is now other things he brings up, right? And this is where I find some hypocrisy in at least what he's saying. So here's a guy who's like the Matrix, the MSM as he calls it, the mainstream media, the Matrix. It's a bunch of baloney. He's like, I knew media as soon as the mainstream media touted the COVID vaccine. I went to Sweden and went to a big party. It's all a bunch of nonsense. I didn't get the jab. I'm good, whatever, right? That's his words. Yeah. And now, when the mainstream media comes out and says that this grooming gang problem is a primarily Pakistani Muslim problem, he's like, I agree. We got to do something about this. Muslims need to acknowledge this as a problem. We will. When a Muslim is part of a grooming gang, I would say Muslims should be held. I personally hold Muslims to a higher standard, at the very least an equivalent standard. I'm like, look, man, you're a Muslim. Muslims say you can't even shake another woman's hand, and here you are raping. Like, this is insane to me, right? Muslims shouldn't approach this stuff.
Which means for us, in all intents and purposes, he wasn't really Muslim.
Who?
The people who are raping and stuff, like they're lacking.
No, it's a sin. Look, in Islam,
they're lacking.
It's a major sin.
They're lacking. It's a major sin, right? They're lacking.
It doesn't take you out of the fold from Islam. Just like a murder doesn't. You can be a murderer and be a Christian or a Muslim, right?
Unless they're not sincere with their forgiveness. If they're repeat offenders, they were never sincere in their forgiveness, and they kept doing it, they would really have to repent for any forgiveness. But in this world, they would get the full force of the punishment.
Yeah, no, of course. And so for me, I find this a little odd. Here's this guy who doesn't trust the mainstream media, but as soon as the mainstream media now is accusing this Muslim rapist, he's like, oh, it's a Muslim problem. We have to acknowledge this. And he did. For what it's worth, he said, look, you can call Muslims bad, and Islam doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Muslims, and this is his words, like Muslims need to acknowledge this as a problem amongst their people. Acknowledge it is the first step to a problem. You acknowledge the problem, and then you can at least try to fix it.
The thing is,
right? And I would agree with that
matters.
if it were true. I would agree with that if it were true. The whole, what we're saying, what I just proved with all these studies is it's very clear that it's not a Muslim-only problem. So stop blaming Islam.
It's a Western problem.
Right? It seems to be a societal issue. Let's fix it.
Yeah. Most people in the West, including Muslims, consume Western media, consume Western movies, Western ideology. They consume it. And we are affected by the things we see. We are affected by women constantly twerking in our feed or whatever it is. Like, we are affected by everything we see. We are affected.
Your feed must be very just saying, man.
I don't get that.
Not too many ladies are twerking.
I'm just saying, as a general Muslim population, like this is what if the average American is exposed to this, Muslims are also in America. They're also exposed to this.
Yeah.
Right. There's no hiding it, right? The things that I face raising my children in America, I won't face those issues in Pakistan or Saudi or somewhere else, right? I'll face different issues maybe, right? There will be different problems. There's always problems. You'll never have like a easy childhood rearing thing, right? But the problems I face here is, will my child go this way or go that way? There's serious issues here.
You worry about going astray, right?
Yeah, going astray in the American context, right? So why would the same people living in America and dealing with America not also manifest these bad qualities? They would. Yeah. At the end of the day, they would, right? Islam is perfect, but it doesn't mean the Muslims are perfect just because they accepted Islam. They would actually, there must be a level of effort to implement what Islam says to make you a good person. And if you don't expend that effort, then you could be led astray.
Yeah. I mean, we're going into what defines a Muslim, but the 100%, what defines a practicing Muslim? Let's say, forget what's Muslim, what's not Muslim, because at the end of the day, Muslim is anyone who says they believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? It's a very simple thing to say. God is one, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the last messenger, basically, right? So that's all it takes to be a Muslim. And anyone who says that and truly believes it is Muslim, right? That's very simple. Now, you could be a Muslim and be a murderer. You could be a Muslim and be a rapist. You could be a Muslim and be anything, right? I mean, Muslims can commit sins. They're not void of these problems. And so that's what I think about it. But not to be a practicing Muslim, right? If you're a practicing Muslim, this is not something you do, right? That's why, I mean, it's a huge deal, right? When a bishop or an imam or anyone is found of committing sexual abuse or whatever, a big scandal that happened amongst the Catholic Church, those people are removed from their position immediately, right?
So I would say it's a very different issue in that sense. You're talking about average Muslims, laymen, not scholars, not leaders of their religion, committing these things. And here you're talking about the literal leaders, the people in power of the religion, the people telling you what the religion says, them committing it. That is different. If you said 90% of the imams and the scholars and the sheikhs and the reciters of the Quran, they're all like this, there's a problem with Islam, right? Now you're talking about really practicing people.
Yeah, practicing people, exactly.
You are talking about the entire clergy having this issue of pedophilia. This is an issue.
Not the entire clergy.
Not the entire clergy.
But there was
there's a huge amount.
Significant.
Not entire. I can't say entire.
Not even close
not
to
even
entire.
Close to entire.
But there was enough. Let's just say enough, right? There was enough
to
of them.
Call it a priest issue.
And it was a cover-up. It was a cover-up. Where the problem was not that, okay, there's some bad actors. I bet there's some imams and sheikhs out there, knowledgeable people considered scholars of Islam, who are bad actors. I bet you, 100%. But they should be few and far between, you would hope. Because practicing Muslims, people who at least appear to be practicing Muslims, you would hope are less likely to commit these sins.
And, I like to put this stuff, I like to talk about Islam in the middle of this podcast because, there is knowledge, right? Islam, we recognize evils. And we don't just say, oh, we're Muslim, we must be good, so it's perfectly fine, right? In Islam, my kids, after a certain age, and I'm talking about age 5 or 6, can't share the same blanket when they're in bed together. This is not a principle that I came up with from my brain, because I don't have that. This is from Islam. We are not allowed to share the same blanket.
After a certain age?
After a certain age.
I think after age 7 or so, you're supposed to separate your children's blankets, and it makes sense.
You're already separating them by gender. But by a certain time, the blankets, they can't share the same blanket. Right? And you get so many cases of older siblings and younger siblings committing sexual things in America. It's like a common thing. It's like a cultural norm that everybody accepts. This probably happens to the majority of people, right?
Like there is some sexual stuff that
happens between kids, and it's kind of accepted. But Islam recognizes that this is a possibility. Islam is not like, oh, we're a Muslim, we are now removed from these human vices and stuff. No, no. We recognize it's a real thing, and we have things in place to prevent them. Same thing with gender segregation, all that stuff, right? Islam has these things in place, and when societies don't have these things in place, they get to them.
I have a separate. This brings up a separate question, where and people say this, right? Where a fair amount of, let's say, pornography is consumed in Saudi Arabia, where they have a lot of segregation and stuff like this, right? So now, and this is a country where Mecca and Medina are. This is a place where a lot of the Islamic scholarship of the world is, you could say. And so now, with that being said, why is that? Is it because they've gone too far the other direction? What's your thoughts on that?
No, so the common trope, Key and Peele sketches, they also go on this, right? Where I think these two guys, they portray them as Arab, and they're like going really excited when they see a woman's ankle, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
This is a trope that's saying, oh, you guys are so pure that anything triggers you, and now you're sexually like
you're like these deviants
or whatever, because Islam is kept you so far away from women that you guys are like excited about an ankle, right? Which is ridiculous because, again, a UK issue that was brought up is, oh crap, Muslims are having too many kids, and they'll overrun the white population. This is a danger to.
It's an existential threat to our
existential crisis.
Democracy,
which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what does that mean when Muslims have too many kids? Muslims are having a lot of sex. We're not incels. By definition,
that's true.
By definition, if we have a lot of kids, we are not incels. We are very well
the sexually satisfied
people.
Sex
right?
is happening.
Sex is happening clearly in the Muslim world, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have the issues where people are going to the gym to look at women. We have women at home and we frequently have sex. We have a lot of kids. We have no problem with that. We don't have the problem where women are suddenly denied men sex and they're like, okay, well, that's it. You're stuck with me for the rest of your life. Christianity says you can't divorce them because you're an adulterer. We don't have these cultural issues.
But that comes up. So why is so much porn consumed in Saudi or Pakistan for that
because
matter?
They're people.
Because they're people.
Because they're people.
That's what I would agree with. Look, and I would say, and this is the problem with the internet. This is. Anyway, again, we had another cutoff. I think this camera is actually stopping about every 20 some minutes. I think once the file size hits about 4 gigabytes.
I think it's like 4 gigabytes, and it
just stops. Whatever. We got to figure it out later. New camera. I just got it today. But so
the question that you asked, right? The question is,
yeah.
people are people. They consume. Okay, they just consume pornography.
Especially when internet. I mean, this is one reason why we try to keep the internet away from our children, because the internet is such a huge place, and curiosity kind of kills the cat, right? Kids are gonna be curious about these, let's say, subjects that are typically taboo, right? There's a reason we don't discuss sex and things of that nature with our children until they're at a certain age, and when they're younger, even when they hit that age, they get really curious and start Googling things and finding things and seeing things. At first, they might find it disturbing, and eventually, it just gets okay, and then makes them feel good about themselves.
So, look, simple thing is gambling. Kids can get gambling addiction by loot boxes. Loot boxes are gambling, right? It's a gateway to gambling.
Russia or something. Someone banned this recently.
But again, if the society exposes people to a lot of gambling or gambling-like things, chances are a lot of society will face gambling problems. If a society shows a lot of sexualization, nudity in PG-13, rated R, this thing is celebrated, you're going to have a lot of sexual issues.
100%. I think just society is over sexualized in this country, and
it will manifest itself in sexual deviance.
Actually, I think that's one of the reasons why bisexuality, whether it's lesbian, gay, and trans, all this stuff, I think is a manifestation of this over sexualization of society in general, where everything is putting a lady in a bikini next to a tire. The tire will sell better. Or everything is about having pretty people on billboards or only half naked people, and the clothes are slowly coming off.
The funny thing is, there's a
crazy
trope, right? Oh, you want to sell a tire? Put a bikini model next to it. You sell a tire.
Which I'm sure it works.
It works, but that doesn't mean it's okay. Yeah. That means it doesn't produce a better society. It actually produces a worse society, right?
100%.
Now, it produces a bunch of people who are objectifying women. They say that if Islam does not objectify women, we cover them up. We asked them to cover it. The women themselves cover up. There was actually one of the things that he quoted in the beginning. Tommy Robinson, he played a video of him, right? And one of the complaints he had against Islam is, look, our white women are accepting Islam. They're wearing the burqa, and they're separating themselves from their families. by their own choice.
Or more maybe they're forced out because their family doesn't like.
They're
Often this is a common problem with converts, where their family kind of.
But this is the problem he has. Look, that white woman, did she not have the freedom of choice? She chose it. She did not have freedom of choice. She chose a burqa. When society clearly hates it, France banned it, Europe hates it, yet she went out of her way. The same way that Jordan Peterson is trying to praise Tommy Robinson in this weird way. Oh, ignore all that, but isn't he something amazing that he is standing up against all this despite them going to cancel him and this and that? The white girl in a burqa could be very canceled by society. But she was brave enough to do something that she believes.
Yeah. And I'll give an example of my wife, actually. My wife is someone, so again, there's a difference of opinion whether a niqab, right? So the hijab is the covering that covers the hair and like that. And the niqab is the facial covering that covers kind of up to your eyes. My wife chose to wear the niqab. And this is not something I asked her to do or anything like that. This is something she did of her own accord. And I said, it's up to you. You want to wear it. I personally don't care. I personally think obviously hijab is fard. I think it's obligatory for women in Islam to wear hijab. Niqab, I'm like, it's up to you. She felt more comfortable. Again, in this society where, hijab is, I guess, at least a bit more accepted, and niqab is absolutely, now you look like, a Saudi full, burqa type.
Or whatever.
Yeah, Wahhabi type, right? The extremist Muslims, when you wear niqab, she chose to do this of her own accord. She feels more comfortable that way. She told me basically a lot of the beauty's in the face, and if I'm going to cover myself, then that makes sense to me.
And she does this probably despite strange looks she gets sometimes at Walmart or somewhere else.
100%. She prefers it. And so I'm like, yeah, hey,
despite society not treating her well sometimes and not acknowledging whatever she chose for herself, her freedom of choice, they still look at, and she's brave enough to still wear it.
Yeah.
So it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
But wrapping up Tate, I think we've gone more than an hour, but wrapping up Tate, right? The only issue I have with Tate in a lot of these people is they call it Islamic, right? Europe has an Islamic problem or whatever it is, right? Islamic, Muslim problem, immigration problem.
Yeah.
Islam in itself is completely, we demonstrated like many times, right? Islam, the teaching of Islam is completely antithesis of propagating rape. In fact, it really much strongly opposes it and stresses capital punishment.
Yeah, the punishment for rape is death.
UK will probably just jail people like that. And then they will get back on good behavior and then do it again. And they'll be jailed again and go back on good behavior and do it again. Islam is like, we have a solution for that. Capital punishment.
Yeah, the punishment for rape is death.
Yeah, that's it. And, I think the solution to British's problem is the very thing that Jordan Peterson is scared of, is the Sharia. In this case, just for this one thing, if they implement a Sharia law, that if a rapist rapes, and there's evidence for it, if you kill them, I think all of Britain will vote for this, and they will implement it, and it will be a Sharia law.
Actually, this is the one thing that it was a brief point that came up in the conversation, and I want to bring it up. They said they did a poll of the Muslims in the UK, and 75% of them said that if Sharia law was brought to the UK, they'd be all for it.
What's wrong with that?
And they're like, oh my God. It's like, dude.
That's democracy.
No. Yeah, that's literally, no. This is anybody. Okay, if I have a set of ideals, this is anybody. I don't care what the ideals are. Any individual. You can just talk to Jordan Peterson. If you told Jordan Peterson all the things you find to be right, if that became, or the people like you, the like-minded people.
It came on a ballot.
If Daily Wire brought up a set of laws and principles and morals that society should live by, and they thought about this, 100 scholars of the highest eminence got together and made this, and you were one of these scholars, and you brought together a series of laws and morals that society should follow, you'd be like, heck yeah, I think society should follow this. And now you'd be like, oh my God, all these people want to bring of course, I'm Muslim. I believe the Quran is the divine guidance, meaning God said murder is wrong. The 10 Commandments, for example, murder is wrong, stealing is wrong, adultery is wrong, all these things.
That's
God
right,
tells me what is right, what is wrong. God tells me I have to listen to my parents, that if my neighbor is going hungry, I am responsible. If I'm eating, my belly is full, and my neighbor is going hungry next door, and I'm unawares, God will hold me responsible. This is what Sharia law isn't just cutting the hand off, killing the guy who commits adultery. No. That's one part of Sharia law, sure.
Which
punishment.
Is probably something that UK needs right now.
A bigger part of Sharia, my day-to-day Sharia law that I'm following is, man, I have to give charity. Man, I have to I feel like God's blessed me. What am I doing with my health? Am I volunteering my time? Am I just wasting? Am I just going on these lavish vacations and doing nothing for my neighbor? What am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my money? This is the problems I think about that Sharia forces me to think about, because that's how I get to heaven as a Muslim.
So the countries such as UAE and stuff that Jordan Peterson reluctantly praised, but also calls them undeserving and
Undeserving of their oil
crap,
money.
and then they blame basically Islamic, so they have all kinds of issues. These countries, several YouTubers and stuff like that, you can see non-Muslims have done experiments there where they leave their jewelry unattended in their laptops, and they come back to them way later and they find them in the same place. These same countries where you can leave your shop open, go to the mosque to pray your prayers because it's Salah time, and come back and nobody has looted it.
It could be a jewelry store. It could
Yes,
be like a bunch
it
of
could be a
gold.
jewelry-
You just walk off.
And
pray,
these
come back.
countries, they have complete safety, while in the U.S., a slight fire and now people are looting their homes.
These opportunists.
Not
like
slight
looters.
fire, but a major fire, but whatever it
Major
is,
fire.
any kind of thing, and now there's looting happening. Is this the product of the Western culture, or is it the product of democracy? What is it? And what is UAE doing there that's so correct that maybe that people don't want to steal? Oh, is it maybe the capital punishment of their getting their hand cut off?
No, you know what? It's a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship.
It's a dictatorship.
That's what's doing it. Again, I don't think that's actually true, but to think that democracy is the end all be all is insane to me. To be that Muslims inherently are promised some Quranic problem, the fact that the 53 Muslim countries are a majority third world or whatever, it's completely insane. Completely insane. It's someone who is ignorant of history and I would say logic at large. So it's pretty pathetic.
Look, every people. I want to end on this because I don't want to become like anti-American or anything like that. I'm an American, and honestly, in my side, I live here for most of my life. There's very nice. I think we discussed this last time too, right? Where they care for the disabled and having braille and all that stuff.
There's a reason this country is the strongest country, the most powerful country, the most economic, the greatest country in the world. There's a reason for it.
There is still justice in this country. Yes, it is getting worse and worse by the year. Justice is less and less important. Stopping crime has become less and less important. Yes, this country is in a decline.
I think it's very clear, unfortunately, at this point.
It is, unfortunately, right? You have theft that happens and nobody gets prosecuted for it. It's too expensive to prosecute him because you have insurance, right? Just let it go. Let the theft, the insurance companies allow theft to happen. And they're scot-free and we get the money back. And I guess that's how society works here, that theft has gone unpunished. But unfortunately, society is degrading. When it gets to the point where the justice is so high that it becomes unlivable, maybe then I'll leave. But right now, I am here mainly because there is justice. I can practice Islam here.
And freedom. Religious freedom. 100%.
I 100%, I could practice Islam here if I wanted to.
And I would argue, I could practice Islam more fully here in some ways than I can in Qatar or Dubai.
In some ways. For instance,
100%.
like I could freely like
this discussion we're having right now.
we can't have elsewhere.
We can't. This podcast where we're talking about Islam and giving our views or whatever it is, we would be unable to do so.
But the same thing in the UAE, right? Some people move to UAE, Muslims and non-Muslims. Why? Because they find some positives there that they don't find in America. And some people and a lot of Muslims too, yeah, they go there and they find positives there that they don't find in America. People won't look at them weird if they wear a niqab, for instance, right? And maybe that's a very big concern for them. But other people like me, I like having my freedom of speech. I like being able to say things and talk about rulers, and I like being able to proselytize on the street and give dawah. I won't be able to do that there, right? First of all, there's not enough non-Muslims to proselytize there.
No, there's a lot. In Dubai,
there's a lot. But again, there is a limit on what you could do publicly.
But you can't publicly go and give dawah.
You can't publicly give dawah.
Over here, you can go to the mall and hand out brochures and talk to people. Over there, you just can't.
Now in Pakistan, those things are allowed. But Pakistan, the justice is very bad.
Pakistan is not just.
It's not just, right? So there's issues with every country. Indonesia, there's other issues why maybe I won't go there. The language barrier, and I don't like nasi goreng. But like every place has issues. I was not born, but I basically grew up. He was born here. And I like the American movies. I like the American comics and their things, and I like the culture here. That's what I'm used to.
I genuinely pray for this country. I pray for the success of this country. I pray for the improvement of the foreign policy of this country. I pray for the leadership of this country. I pray for the people of this country all the time. I want this country to be successful.
I want a secure border.
Because I do believe that, we say this all the time, that the president of America is the leader of the
world.
the leader of the freedom of the world, right? Or whatever.
The free, what is it called? What do they call it? What's the thing? The free leader of the world.
Yes, something along those lines, right? The leader of the free world, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with that, and I do feel that America holds this place and this status in the world today. And of course, I think if we were a better nation, a stronger nation, a more just nation, we could also do more justice abroad. Not just, and by the way, I'm America first in many ways. I think America should focus on itself. There's many problems at home.
I live here.
Yeah, there's many problems at home. There's many problems I see my patients every day who are struggling. So healthcare is a huge issue in this country, right? The fact that someone murdered the CEO of United Healthcare, and people are like, well, we don't condone murder, but kind of deserve. Honestly, that's a general sentiment. It's insane to me.
I think murder is murder, right?
Yeah, murder is murder, but no one's really talking about the murder. They're saying like, what's the problem? Imagine a big murder was committed, and then what's the primary talk about? Healthcare problem. No one said, oh my God, what a terrible guy. No, they could. Like, let's talk about healthcare.
They could have talked about both things.
Yeah, but they didn't. But it shows this country has its own issues, and I am genuinely in many ways America first. I'm like, yeah, let's focus on.
I find it an issue in recent times where they had the riots in Oregon, and then they had the Floyd, the what do you call it, the Black Lives Matter. I believe that's
was it Oregon. I don't think it was in Oregon.
In Portland, right?
Was it in Portland?
The whole
sure.
And the looting happened, right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of looting happened. Right now, the fires that are happening, a bunch of looting. I remember Hurricane Katrina and the other hurricane that just happened right now, recently, mass looting, right? What is happening to the nation, to our nation, that we are getting such mass looting on every single disaster when the community should be getting together and helping those people? And in fact, we had to stop looters.
Did they have what's it called? The National Border people.
National Guard.
The National Guard coming to help out and stop with the looting, and police forces having to police the burnt down homes so people don't go and loot them, or the people who evacuated their homes in case of a fire, they're going to...
Oh, the fires themselves seems to be started by arson.
Potentially.
Oh, but no.
Potentially.
But not only that, they caught people while these fires are raging. And there's already an extreme disaster. They're starting more fires.
Yeah. There's a person who's walking around with a, what do you call it, the really strong fire that you can like melt.
Flamethrower?
No. Whatever. It's a thing you melt metal and stuff like that, right? Like a blowtorch. Get a blowtorch. A guy was just walking around a neighborhood, like this evacuated neighborhood with a blowtorch. And this guy who I guess hadn't evacuated yet was like, what the frick? They hunted him down. They pulled him away. They're like, why? And apparently, this is according to Fox News. I was watching a little bit earlier. Fox News is like, his reason was so I can light my joint. So, I mean, can't make this stuff up. But it's crazy. It's crazy. So I pray for this country. I genuinely do. I hope the best for this country.
I hope I can live and my kids can live here and my grandchildren can live here. I hope. Why not?
I'm American. I was born here. I could become the president. Potentially.
So I think it is better for me that I never have to leave.
100%.
The justice goes so far away that I would have to leave. That would be the worst scenario for me.
This is my home. I have no intention of going anywhere. Anyway, I think we spoke long enough. Fascinating conversation. Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for listening. Please like, subscribe, all the things. Hopefully, we'll figure all this stuff out. There'll be less interruptions and stuff. And tune in next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. I say wa alaikum assalam too, but assalamu alaikum.